Hi, I'm Sharon. Welcome today. I can tell you, as outlandish as this story is, it really is based on the truth. I do exaggerate for humor's sake because that's me. Death is never funny, but my colleagues in the South were truly nuts, and I can assure you I fit in well. This story is called The Missionary versus the Hippies. Wednesday afternoon at 11, Beauregard got a call that there'd been a death at a residence. At least it won't interrupt my supper, he muttered. He drove to a small wooden house that was unpainted out in the county. It was covered in psychedelic peace signs and brightly painted multicolored flowers. His eyes widened as they swept over a sign, "Flower Power," above the doorway. While his one eye swept over the sign, the glass eye roamed over the Volkswagen bus spray painted with flowers parked on the side of the hut, and the herbs in the garden area, and a tuft of cotton floating in the air. I'll be dipped and rolled in cracker crumbs, he thought. A bunch of flower children. A group had gathered in a circle outside the shanty, obviously waiting on him. Men and women alike were dressed in bright bohemian-colored outfits, headscarves, sandals, beads. Beauregard opened the door of his Suburban. One male walked forward. "I'm Malcolm Hanson. Peace and love, Cat. Give me some skin." Then Malcolm held out his hand. Beauregard thought, what in tarnation is wrong with these people? He put out his hand and shook Malcolm's. "I'm Beauregard P. Wienerman, funeral director, and I'm here to remove the body." "We know, man. Caroline is dancing in the sun in our pad, wearing flowers in her hair." "Well, swat my behind and call me a melon rind." Beauregard was obviously caught off guard. Malcolm just stared at him. Never mind, Malcolm, it's just a saying. Caroline was one of my spiritual partners, my wife. We practice love here, free love, in our communal living center. Well, I do declare you're a communal living space. It's beautiful. 15 of us live here. We're not dominated by materialism or judgmentalism. We dance, we love, we get our groove on. Heavens to Betsy, well, I never. A young woman with brightly painted lips and smoky-stained eyelids stepped forward wearing orange rimless glasses. "Daddy-o, we live here together celebrating Mother Earth." She handed him a flower. "How nice. I'll dance at your wedding," was all Beauregard could think to answer. Although his one eye was quite interested in the pretty young thing standing in front of him, the glass eye was rather distracted by the holistic green plants in the garden, the swaying of the beads hanging from a beam on the porch, and a spider crawling up the windshield of the VW bus. Those surrounding Beauregard were distracted and yet mesmerized by his quivering glass eye. It was like looking at a car accident. You really don't want to see the details of the horror, and yet you just couldn't pry your eyes away from it. Beauregard was equally distracted by his spasming of his glass eye. He took out his handkerchief and mopped off the sweat of his brow. "The body," Beauregard said. "Don't rush on my account." Malcolm motioned to another woman. "Tabitha, show Beauregard where Caroline is resting, waiting for the stars to align before crossing the Rainbow Bridge." "This group is going to hell in a handbasket," Beauregard mumbled under his breath. Tabitha opened the door for Beauregard to follow with his gurney. The walls were decorated with tapestries and macrame hangings that all depicted love, not hate. Throw pillows and rugs of every color nestled in each corner. Beauregard looked at the small, attractive woman on one of the mattresses and said, "She was no bigger than moles on a chigger." Words of comfort seemed to be at a loss for him. "She's so pretty she'd make a man plow through a stump." Tabitha moved closer. She was a foxy mama. "She had more curves than a barrel of snakes," Beauregard agreed. "She was born with the dawning of the age of Aquarius, which represents the constellation of stars, which is the 11th of the zodiac." Beauregard looked at her. "The Lord only knows, and he's not telling." "I can tell you're not a believer, Mr. Wienerman, but she celebrated love and life with us. We all love each other." And then she broke out in song. "Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be." "Lordy, Lordy, stop that carrying on. Do you think I could get some men to lift Caroline onto the gurney?" She left quickly. Two bearded men with hair parted down the middle, led by Malcolm, came in the door. Beauregard decided there was no need for him to do any lifting since there were young men around. After all, he should save his strength since he would have work to do when he got her to the medical examiner's office. Any unattended death had to be taken for an autopsy. Beauregard asked Malcolm for her personal identification. Caroline was a free spirit. Dig it? She had no ID, no money, no family. But she did have eyes for me. She married me and my family. Doesn't that just beat all you ever stepped in? I understand about no money, Beauregard said. My family was so poor, we had to fertilize the sills before we could raise the windows. Malcolm just studied him. Well, anyway, the county does provide some money for indigent burials unless your family wants to pay for the funeral. Malcolm responded, "If the world demanded peace instead of material things such as funerals, we'd have peace." "Bless your heart," Beauregard said, but he thought, "Dag nabbit, not going to make a dime on this service." As Beauregard pushed the gurney to the Suburban, the family joined hands and sang, "Here Comes the Sun." The results of the autopsy came back. Drug overdose. The cause was not clear. It could have been accident, suicide, or even homicide, but the examiner couldn't determine that, so it was left at death due to drug overdose. On Friday, Beauregard met with the entire commune. Because there was no ID, no name, really no pot to spit in or window to throw it out of, Beauregard arranged for the county to pay for the funeral. However, since Malcolm said Caroline was his wife, so to speak, he was allowed to make all the choices for the graveside service. Caroline was embalmed, placed in a mottled gray cloth-covered casket with spray-painted handles. She was dressed in a buttery-colored blouse with a vibrant blue vest, accented with large yellow sunflowers. Her makeup was dark, her blouse cut low, and a peace sign hung around her neck. Visitation began at 10 in Dallas. All seemed to be going quite well. That is, until 1 o'clock, when Beauregard received a call from an overseas flight preparing to land in Dallas. Bring, bring. Pressman Mortuaries, Mr. Wienerman speaking. How may I assist you? This is Nelson Wood. You have my wife Caroline in your mortuary, and I'm here coming to make arrangements. All Beauregard could master was, well, cut my legs off and call me Shorty. Did you hear what I said, Shorty? Nelson asked. No, I'm not Shorty. That's just well, never mind, Beauregard stuttered. But I think you made a mistake. We have a woman named Caroline, but you see, Mr. Wood cut him off mid-sentence. Malcolm Handsome claimed she was an indigent. She was not, I assure you. I'm quite serious, and I'll be bringing proof with me. I'll arrive at the airport in half an hour and drive directly to your funeral establishment. Beauregard heard the phone go dead at the other end of the line. He immediately dialed Bessie May. Bessie May looked at her cell and groaned. It's Beauregard, isn't it? Earl asked. The square-framed woman with soft bovine eyes and warm molasses drawl answered, Earl, honey, this is our first weekend together in 3 weeks. He is not going to mess this up for us. Just ignore his call. You know he's as full of wind as a corn-eating horse. I can't. Fallon won't let me. Plus, he's so thin-skinned, he's just barely got enough to keep him from bleeding to death. She put her mouth to the phone. What do you want, Beauregard? If you interrupt my weekend for no good reason, I'll kill you and swear you died. Bessie May, I've got problems, he screamed. Fallon will fire me if I don't get this straightened out. It's a mess, and it's not my fault. I've got one body and 2 husbands claiming her. Beauregard, are you commode-hugging, knee-walking drunk again? Bessie May, I'm as serious as the business end of a 45. Okay, slow down. Start from the beginning. No, it's time to put out the fire and call in the dogs. I need you at the funeral home now. The second husband is to arrive in half an hour, and the first one is in loving up the corpse right now. He's what? I was just in the stateroom. He had her sitting up in the casket, holding her in his arms and facing the hippies. The hippies? Facing the hippies. Why, while they're all in circles around singing, If I Had a Hammer. What'd you do, Beauregard? Well, Bessie May, what'd you expect me to do? I couldn't holler, drop that body. Now, could I? Her clothes are a mess. Her makeup's a mess. They got flowers strewn all over the floor. Fallon's gonna kill me. If it ain't bed bugs, it's ants. Not if I get to you first. Bessie May, you gotta help me. It's really beginning to smell ugly in the stateroom. Bessie May gasped. Is it the body? No, I think the flower children are smoking something, but I can't catch 'em. I've been in and out so much I don't feel well myself. The air is thick and heavy, although I'm not as stressed as I was a while ago. I'm more mellow. Maybe it's my natural inner strength coming out. Doubtful, Beauregard. I'm on my way. Earl, baby, I gotta go. If I'm not wrong, I think Beauregard may be higher than a kite on secondhand marijuana smoke. Even for him, that would be new, Earl said. By the time Bessie May walked through the funeral home door, Beauregard was sitting with his feet propped up on the receptionist's desk and his hands behind his head. How do, Bessie May? Don't you how do me, Beauregard Wienerman. I need to see that family folder now. All right, Dumplin', don't have a hissy fit with a tail on it. He pulled one arm down slowly and then the other, but was nearly jolted out of his chair when she bent over and knocked his feet on the floor. She got nose to nose with him and glared into his fully dilated eyes. Get a strong cup of coffee when Mr. Wood arrives, and keep your mouth shut. It's better to keep your mouth shut and seem a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. Is that clear? Now you get down to that stateroom and make it presentable. Move it. Even in his extremely relaxed state, Beauregard could still sense the threat from the woman standing in front of him. Yes, he ambled off to find coffee and a broom. Bessie May studied the folder quickly until she heard the jingle of the front door. Mr. Wood, please come in and sit down. I'm Mrs. Bustleby. Please call me Bessie May. I'm Nelson, the short man with the friendly face said. I was speaking with a man earlier. Yes, Mr. Wienerman. He's temporarily incapacitated. He did seem to be bumfuzzled. Bessie May couldn't have summed it up any better. I brought all the paperwork showing Caroline's ID in our marriage. Bessie May scanned the paperwork. It was authentic. I've been on the mission field overseas for nearly 7 months. A man named Malcolm Hanson seduced her into his flower power cult. He knew full well who she was and that I was overseas. She ended up in his cult. It's only recently that I've been able to get the paperwork cleared to come home. 2 weeks ago, I received this letter from Caroline saying she was leaving the cult, returning to me. Nelson handed her the letter. What did the medical examiner say, Bessie May? The autopsy said the death was the result of a drug overdose, and that's all. Nelson slammed his fist down on the desk. Malcolm had her murdered because she was leaving him and coming back to me. I don't want him anywhere near her body. Well, as her husband, you have that right under Texas law, and we'll see to it. Beauregard showed up at the office door and whispered, "Excuse-moi, Bess," and then he burped. Burp. Bessie May's ears turned red. Oopsie, he grinned. He held up his thumb and pointing finger, 1/2 inch apart. We've got a teensy-weensy, itsy-bitsy, teeny-weeny problem in one of the staterooms. Bessie May said, I'll be right back, Nelson. If looks could have killed, Beauregard's body would already be turning to dust. Bessie May grabbed Beauregard by the arm and yanked him halfway down the hall. What do you mean we've got a teeny-weeny problem in one of the staterooms, she whispered in between clenched teeth. Don't kill the messenger, Bessie May. Beauregard, she threatened. All right. They've got the dummy up talking and singing again. They've got the dummy up. It was then she figured out what he was talking about. She looked at her watch. It was 2:30. Beauregard, you go keep a low profile in that lounge. Can you do that? He nodded his head up and down and slinked away. Then she tromped to the stateroom. The air was heavy with halos of smoke. As soon as the flower children saw her, they stopped mid-word as Bessie May looked madder than a puffed toad. Visitation ends now in preparation for tomorrow. A private viewing will be for Mr. Wood from 10 until 11:30. Friends may come at noon. Thank you for your courtesy. Then she ushered him out of the room. She went to get Beauregard. Make sure they all leave and stay gone. Leave both doors open and spray this room. You clean up here. Is that clear? Yes, ma'am, he said, looking at the floor. Nelson was waiting for her in the office. I brought a dark green suit with a white button-up blouse. It was her favorite because of her auburn hair. Caroline wore no makeup or jewelry. She didn't need to. She was gorgeous without it. Arrangements for the graveside service were made for Monday at 10, with a minister of the same conservative denomination. After Nelson left, Bessie May walked into the lounge where she found the plump peccary munching on his fifth bag of chips. He was surrounded by empty candy bar wrappers. I can't figure out why I'm so hungry, but I could eat the south end of a northbound skunk. Hungry or not, you're going to help me get Caroline ready for visitation tomorrow. Nelson brought in different clothes. It was almost 6 when Earl heard Bessie May come home. Rough day? I was straightening out Beauregard's messes all day. Nuff said, B.M. Baby. Supper's hot and on the table. The next morning, Beauregard whined about a headache. Bessie May wasn't very sympathetic, considering her weekend was run by Beauregard's ineptness. Take a pill and quit your belly aching. Nelson viewed Caroline at 10. Under no circumstances do I want Malcolm Handsome in my wife's stateroom. Bessie May looked at Beauregard. That is Mr. Wienerman's #1 responsibility today. You will see to that, won't you? Yes, ma'am. I don't know if I'll be back because I need to make arrangements for Monday, Nelson said. We'll handle everything, Bessie May assured him. After Nelson left, she threatened Beauregard. Don't you let Malcolm in this building, and don't you let this visitation turn into a circus. Don't ride my case. I know how to do this. I've got the same credentials you do, woman. She rolled her eyes. At 2, Bessie May met with a family who had just walked in the front door to make arrangements. There was a rap, rap, rap at her door. Bessie May, Beauregard whispered. His one eye was looking at Bessie May, but his glass eye was rotating among the dust balls under the desk, the picture of the Pressman family on the wall, and the dead fly in the windowsill. The family was mesmerized by the antics of his eye. I'm in the middle of making arrangements, Mr. Wienerman. I know, but this will only take a minute, and it's urgent. Excuse me. Bessie May sighed. I'll be right back. This better be urgent or I swan I'm going to knock you into next week. It is. They've got the dummy up talking and singing again. And they brought in more clothes and jewelry, and there's smoke. It's back. Beauregard, can't you handle anything? Lawsy, I left you in charge of one thing, the stateroom. It's not my fault, he whined. You can stop denying it was your fault, Beauregard, but beating a dead horse don't make it taste any better. Honest, it wasn't my fault this time, he whined. I was just standing outside the door and I got the munchies. They're real bad this time, worse than before. So I went into the lounge for chips and candy, and when I got back, Bessie May stomped into the smoky stateroom. All of the beaded visitors in sandals were holding hands in a circle singing, Love the One You're With, until Bessie May appeared. Carolyn's blouse was unbuttoned down to the 3rd button, and a bohemian scarf had been tied around her hair. Her suit jacket was gone. There was a peace sign draped around her neck until Bessie May jerked it off. She was in no mood to be trifled with. Everyone in the room denied knowledge of what had happened to Caroline's suit coat. Bessie May ordered everyone out of the stateroom and under the back porch awning so she could redress Caroline. Whoo, doggy, she said when they were out of earshot. Bessie May found the jacket stuffed behind the backside of the casket. Bessie May yelled at Beauregard, who was back in the lounge, munching again. Get your butt in here and make Caroline presentable. There's family from Nelson's church up front to pay their last respects, and I need to finish with the family in the office. And for heaven's sake, spray air freshener in here before you bring that family back. Okay, but what shall I tell the hippy-dippies waiting under the awning? Tell them to mellow out a while. They should be able to do that, and they can't come in until the other family up front leaves. Beauregard whined. That'll ruffle their feathers. I'll ruffle your feathers if you interrupt me again before I finish up with this family. Now stay out of the lounge, the chips, the candy, the soda, and do your job. Bessie May was determined to get this day over with. She shouldn't have had to work this weekend at all. Due to Beauregard, she was stuck here with children from a different galaxy. She didn't know why Fallon had it in his head she was the only one who could deal with Beauregard, but she didn't like it. She should receive hazard duty pay. She finished with the family and headed for the stateroom. Her high heels clicked down the hallway when she heard whispering. Put her down, quickly, hurry, she's coming again. I'm gonna kill them, she thought. Then I'm gonna kill Beauregard. Beauregard heard her too. He ran from the lounge. Well, to be fair, he waddled, but for him that was as close to running as he would ever get. He wiped his hands on his suit pants, but he was still chomping chips. He sputtered breathlessly, I'm here! Unfortunately, small specks of chips spewed all over Bessie May. Her eyes narrowed under her furrowed brows. He started to brush the specks off, but realized it would probably be lethal if he put a finger on her. She threw open the stateroom doors. Beads were still suspended in motion as everyone hugged a seat, like the children's game musical chairs. I have an announcement, Bessie May said. After the services tomorrow, although the service is tomorrow, you might not feel comfortable attending since Mr. Wood will be there. I am sure Caroline would understand if you just stayed home and celebrated her life there. She looked around the room at dilated eyes with bodies sitting crisscross applesauce on chairs in front of her. Bless your hearts. If you feel you absolutely must show up, you are expected to be respectful. Is that understood? Heads bobbed up and down. Well, what are you waiting for? Go. Elbows and sandals flew as the group ducked around the towering Southern Belle, standing with her arms crossed in the middle of the room. She watched as they exited the back door and clicked the lock behind them. Then she faced Beauregard. Come with me. He tagged behind her to the office. She handed him the landline. Call Malcolm Hanson. Tell him he's not to show up to the funeral tomorrow or we'll call the police. And his cult needs to stay home. She was madder than a wet setting hen. Beauregard gulped. He took the phone and looked up Malcolm's number on the folder. Bessie May stood in the office and leaned against the doorway to make sure he actually called. He dialed and waited for a voice to answer. Hello, Malcolm? This is Beauregard Wienerman from the funeral home. I'm sorry to tell you, Mr. Wood, that Mr. Wood has forbidden you to attend Caroline's funeral tomorrow. He heard a click on the other end of the line, and then it went dead. And Beauregard continued, as though Malcolm was still on the line, I'm afraid if you show up for the service, we will be forced to involve the police. No, we wouldn't want to do that. Thank you, Malcolm, for being so understanding. He looked up and smiled at Bessie May. Yes, I'm glad your friends thought she looked nice in the casket. We do our best. One other thing, Malcolm, we think it would be best if you and your family would hold a private service at your home tomorrow for Caroline instead of coming to the cemetery. Oh, good. I'm so glad you agree. He held up a thumbs up sign to Bessie May. You are quite welcome. Have a good evening. Then he hung up the phone. Then he looked at Bessie May. See, I told you I'd handle everything. "It's a good thing you did," she said. "Since none of the hippies will be there tomorrow, you can take Granger with you to handle the service. I'm going to stay at the funeral home." He gulped again. "Don't worry, Bessie May. I've got everything under control." "Now call a cab, Beauregard. You're in no shape to drive." The next morning, Nelson arrived with Minister Hegarty. The cemetery crew had set up a tent to protect the mourners from the Texas scorching sun. Chairs were arranged in 2 columns with center aisle down the middle. "Granger, assist the pallbearers with the casket," Beauregard said. After that, he led Nelson and the minister to the casket. Then he whispered, "Granger, go stand out of the way while I handle the critical part." "Figures," Granger mumbled as he stood under a tree to watch the buffoon perform all the important duties. It was 5 till 10 when not only the friends of Nelson arrived, but also the flower-power children. Beauregard started to sweat until it dripped off the end of his stubby nose. He looked out over the mourners. On one side sat men with short hair clad in blue and brown suit jackets, accompanied by women with hair pulled up in buns, dressed in button-up blouses, wearing hats and carrying purses. On the other side, however, sat men with long hair parted down the center, displaying bushy mustaches or beards. Men and women alike wore tie-dyed outfits, radiating all the colors of the rainbow. One man wore no shirt, only a leather vest with fringes. Beads, sandals, and rimless sunglasses accented the outfits. It was a startling contrast between the 2 groups. At a short distance, and certainly within earshot of the minister's sermon, stood Malcolm Hanson. Since he wasn't under the tent, but on cemetery property, he couldn't legally be removed. Nelson and Malcolm glared at each other. Beauregard's cheeks flushed. He regretted eating so much at Elsie's all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet, but he was sure he could hold it together. The minister began with a short prayer and then started with an odd selection of scripture for a funeral. "Today I'm preaching on a subject that this audience obviously needs. Hebrews 13:4 says marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed should be kept pure. For God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral." He paused and gawped at the flower children. At that, nearly half of the rainbow dress clan rose from their chairs and began singing, "This land is your land, this land is my land." Then they marched out of the tent to stand in back of Malcolm. Beauregard's stomach was also on the march. Granger saw him duck around the tent. Granger dialed the funeral home. "Pressman Funeral, Bessie, this is Granger. You gotta come quick." "What's going on, Granger?" "We don't have a licensed funeral director at this service." "Where's Beauregard?" "He's over puking his guts out in the lilac bushes." "Ew! Nobody's going to give those flowers to their mama." "Nope. Now he's passed out in the bushes." Wait. He just stood back up. Now he just looked around and saw the marchers over by Malcolm." Nope, Bessie May, he's fainted. He's back down again." "The marchers by Malcolm," Bessie exclaimed. Wait. He's up on his hands and knees." No, he's down again." "Wait, his head's coming up." "No, false alarm, he's down again." "Never mind, Granger, I'm on my way." Bessie May heaved a heavy sigh while she ran to the vehicle. Granger heard the minister raise his voice. "And I'm not done with the truth. Matthew 5:21 commands, 'You shall not murder anyone, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment.'" By this time, Beauregard was up on his hands and knees, but when he heard the minister belt out the word judgment, he spread-eagled on the ground like a possum hit by an 18-wheeler in the middle of the interstate. When the remaining half of the free-loved children heard the word judgment, however, they began chanting in unison, "Meditate, don't hate. Meditate, don't hate. Meditate, don't hate." Then they joined the other flower power group, standing off to the side of the tent. The minister smiled at Nelson. "Now that they're gone, we can finish this service in peace." Nelson heard a rustling from the side of the tent. One of the flaps was raising. Malcolm was down on his hands and knees, crawling to the underside of the casket, where he reached up and kissed it. The minister's mouth gaped open. Malcolm screamed, "Bye, babe. Love you, babe. Miss you, babe. I know you had only eyes for me, babe." Bessie May pulled up just in time to see Malcolm crawling out of the tent over to his followers while continually caterwauling about his steaming love for Caroline. The minister gathered his senses quickly enough to hold Nelson back from chasing Malcolm. "There's a whole clan of them. Let him go, Nelson. He's not worth it." Bessie May got out of her car and tromped over to Malcolm and his group. She was madder than a boiled owl, and her voice reflected it. "The police are on their way." "We have every right to be here," Malcolm said. "No, you don't," Bessie May thundered. "By order of Texas Law LB 7438, you are inciting a disturbance at a public funeral. Would you like me to tell you the fine and incarceration involved if you're still here when the police arrived?" Bessie May was excellent at making up Texas and federal laws on the spur of the moment. "No," Malcolm said, "we're leaving." The minister finished the service quietly, and Caroline was finally laid to rest. After Nelson left, Bessie May went over to Granger. "Where's Beauregard?" "He's still passed out in the lilac bushes like a hare in a biscuit." She and Granger walked over to Beauregard. "Beauregard, Beauregard." He opened up one eye. "I am losing my religion due to you." He was pale as white on rice. Beauregard straggled up and held on to a branch to brace himself. He wiped his whole head with his handkerchief. "Did I miss anything, Bessie May?" "Just your life passing before you. Before I kill you and tell the Lord you're dead." Beauregard's glass eye began spinning like an out-of-control tilt-a-wheel at an amusement park. "Granger, get him in the hearse and take him back to the mortuary. I'm calling in sick for the rest of the day." And she did. Did this story really happen, and was there really someone who came under the tent flap and crawl on their hands and knees and kiss the underbelly of a casket and scream, "I love you, babe, miss you, babe," and was accused of killing the deceased and claimed to be the other spouse of the deceased? And yep, it happened in Texas. Have a good day. I hope you had a laugh or two.